Hi there, welcome to our GBL mini course, topic 1, the justification for GBL. And the context is we're looking at business simulation and team dynamics as a mechanism for game-based learning to make leadership development more effective. So what is the value of game-based learning in the first place? So before I start to describe this, we first of all need to recognize that game-based learning is a reasonably new discipline, so there's not the abundance of evidence you would like there to be, but it is coming through. Secondly, it's a blended discipline. As I'm practicing it, we're integrating business simulation, experiential learning, team dynamics. So you sometimes need to look at the individual components and work out how they all fit together. And thirdly, it's buyer beware territory. There's a lot of statistics being bandied about which are just plain misleading. For example, one I've heard quite recently is a good lecture improves learning by 17%, but a good game will improve learning by 108%, which is a factor of 6. That all sounds great, but if you do look at the research, this really applies exactly to how school children learn physics in classrooms. So not really applicable to the world of leadership development. So with those things said, let's look at what evidence is out there. And all the evidence is actually summarized in my book if you want to go into the references in more detail. So first of all, pure game-based learning is safe. It's a safe environment for learning, uses best practices of experiential learning, very engaging, and reasonably well evidenced. The evidence is that game-based learning can help people engage more. People find it very engaging. People learn by doing and hence retain more. And as they're also doing it and learning personally, the behavior change is more natural. A key element of game-based learning is business simulation. And there's good documentation, evidence on showing that business simulation is more effective than written case studies. It needs realistic data. It doesn't need live data. And live data can be a problem because live data sometimes takes too long for things to develop. So sometimes you need to tweak the data to shorten the sequences. It does improve learning, but it does require skilled facilitation. All the feedback I get is best feedback is always when the facilitators and coaches are really good. That's when people learn the most. Now, particularly like team game-based learning, it brings in two other dimensions. First of all, social learning, and secondly, team dynamics. A friend of mine, Jay Cross, who's written a great book called Informal Learning, has identified that 90% of what people need to do their jobs is a result of informal learning. And this is finding things out for yourself, making mistakes on the job, talking to colleagues, and being in a coaching relationship. So one of the great things about team game-based learning is people will learn more from their colleagues and the other participants. If done well, then they would learn just from putting numbers into a business simulation game. It's a great way for organizations to share what they know, to pass on best practice. The other thing that's really interesting about team game-based learning is the ability for the team to evolve into a more effective team, starting off as a naive team and becoming more effective and dealing with all those rough edges around team formation, such as leaders who don't listen and passive participation. So that's kind of the evidence that I can see that looks relatively solid for game-based learning in terms of the published research. Another very interesting piece of research was carried out by Jessica Tribus, who's a director at CMU, and she identified 8 criteria for learning effectiveness, which in itself is a very good list. To be effective, learning should be cost effective, there should be low physical risk, it should be able to allow comparisons between different individuals, it should be highly engaging. The pace should be tailorable to the individuals. Some might want to go fast, others might want to go slow. They should be able to get feedback immediately they make mistakes, not a long time after they've made the mistakes, because the learning is richer and you can do something about it. You can correct the problem. The other thing we've kind of touched on is the ease of transfer of individual learning to the workplace. Can it be easily transferred? Because if it's not, there is no value. And finally, learner engagement, very important. So Jessica identified these 8 criteria and then did some research on them. And this is what she found. First of all, passive training, listening to somebody like me talk, you'll get the first 3 benefits. Hands-on training, where we start to do exercises together and you get a chance to try things out, you tend to get the remaining benefits 5 to 8. However, if you do game-based learning, you can get all 8 benefits. So it does sound a little bit obvious when you say it, but game-based learning combines the benefits of passive training and hands-on training and manages to get all the benefits. It doesn't lose anything out. You don't have to make sacrifices. So that's a nice piece of validation for game-based learning. Now, what about strategy and thought leadership? What are people saying about game-based learning? Well, one of the major thought leaders and influencers in terms of analysts is Gartner. Gartner research, and for different technologies they have this beautiful little thing called the Gartner hype cycle, which kind of talks about the life cycle of a new technology appearing. And it starts off with, you hear about the technology, that's called the technology trigger, then everybody goes mad. This technology is going to do everything that none of the other technology's done before, and that's called the peak of inflated expectations. That quickly or slowly gets dissipated into a state of disillusionment, and after that then the benefits start to come out. We have the slope of enlightenment and the plateau of productivity, and some technologies can do this whole transition in a couple of years, others it might be 10 to 15 years. Now, Gartner have actually been a strong supporter of game-based learning since 2006. Where they published a report which was entitled Key Reasons Why You Should Consider a Learning by Gaming Strategy. So they've been out there in terms of saying this thing is important and can significantly improve the transfer and application of knowledge. But if you look at Gartner, then produce a hype cycle every year. On the one I'm going to show you is the one for education. And this is pretty much up to date, 2016. And it shows that gamification is starting to move up the slope of enlightenment. And game-based learning is actually a subset of gamification. It's a gamification of learning. So you might say, well, okay, that's a bit to go yet. But if you look at 2014, gamification was here. 2012, it was here. So it's moving quite rapidly. So gamification of learning is well along the path towards what they call the plateau of productivity, and well worth considering. The other thing I noticed when I looked at these hype cycles was the role of mobile learning. More and more people want to learn using mobile technology. So if you're thinking about a game-based learning strategy, you need to take that into account, that people do like to learn using mobile. So that's all I really want to say in terms of the argument for game-based learning. There's good evidence. It's not as rich as we would like it to be, but it's coming on strong. And also thought leaders are saying strategically, and also companies who are taking a leading position in this are getting advantage from it. So there's a solid argument for game-based learning. If you're very conservative, you might hang on a bit and not do anything yet, but you might well miss the opportunity. So the next video in the series is 3 lenses for game-based learning, trying to help us think about ways to look at game-based learning rather than from a technological angle. Thank you.